welcome back to How to Be a Better DM. I'm your host, Justin Lewis, here with my cohort, Tanner Wayland.
Hey
Say
guys.
hello, Tanner.
Hey, I hope you guys are all doing great, because I am.
And today we are actually streaming this to YouTube for a change, so we'll see how that goes. But the whole point of How to Be a Better DM is to together learn how to craft better stories for you and us and our players as we DM sessions of D&D. Excuse me. We all know that one D&D is getting ever closer, and obviously the newest installment of Unearthed Arcana material has just been released. Well, just like a couple weeks ago, but it's been released by Wizards of the Coast for us to playtest. So today we're going to give you the facts of what was released as well as some of our opinions about those facts. But before we dive in, let me mention to you to stick around to the end of today's show because we're going to tell you how to enter the giveaway that is starting as of the release of this podcast episode. So Thursday the 27th. And I promise you won't want to miss it, so stick around. But Tanner, let's get into today's topic, which is Unearthed Arcana 2 expert classes.
Perfect. Yeah, and some of you might be wondering, what is an expert class? So this is one of the big changes that they're actually doing for classes in general. They're kind of grouping them in a way that you haven't really seen before, because I think mentally we had this idea of of classes being like, oh, you have your spellcasters, you got your more faith-ish based kind of people, but now they're actually like full on making them different class groups. Just to tell you what those are, you have the experts, which is what they release now, and that includes bards, rangers, rogues, and I believe they also said artificer is going to be in that,
Correct.
but it's kind of like an extra, not core. I don't know if they can consider them core classes anymore, but it's kind of like an extra class, so they didn't really go into that this time. And then other ones, mages would be sorcerer, warlock, wizard, priests would be cleric, druid, paladin, and warriors would be barbarian, fighter, monk. Um, and like they each have kind of like different, focuses. And one of the big reasons they're doing this is so that they can have different like feat lists. And essentially, the feats are kind of like broken up by group, and you have some that are non-grouped feats, but the majority of them will be like, oh, it's an expert feat. And so if you're whether you're a bard, ranger, or rogue, you kind of just have a shared list like that. I don't know. What do you think about that change, Justin?
I think it's interesting, and I'd be interested to see if down the road they add to that list. So there's the experts, mages, priests, uh, and fighters. But I'd be interested to see if, as a community, we can come up with other sections, not sections, but like
Groupings?
classification. Yeah,
Yeah,
groupings.
classifications. Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know, but those do definitely seem fairly complete, as it were.
Yeah.
But I like it, and I do like how they are focusing a lot more on feats, allowing you to make a more versatile character and really expand the building of your character.
Yeah, exactly. And I find that like a lot of what they're doing, it kind of goes towards their streamlining efforts and making it easier. But like I've noticed that a lot of the changes have been that way, right? Like when they, and I hear that they're already considering changing it, but when they simplified natural ones and nat 20s to being like, oh, regardless of if it's a skill or ability check or anything like that, you automatically succeed or lose, even though that wasn't the case. You can tell that that's like them trying to simplify it. And same when they changed the spell, the spell kind of categories,
Yeah.
how they went with, what was it? It was arcane, divine, primal,
Hmm.
and that's like also obviously them trying to make it less complicated, so you don't have like your own classes like list, but
Yeah.
rather you've got, oh, your class pulls from this category or whatever, right? I think some people are gonna like it. Like it's great frankly, and we talk about this all the time in our podcast, it's great for new people. It kind of breaks down that barrier to entry of knowledge, at least. But I think for other people who are pretty familiar and they're looking for more depth, nah, I'm cautious to say if everybody's going to accept it, you know?
Yeah. I will say one thing that's kind of nice is um, compared to other editions, 5e has probably been put online more, and so it's a lot more available.
Yeah, totally.
So if, you know, you have your standard player who's played 5e and excuse me, and prefers that method, they can just revert back to having spell lists for individual classes and treat it like that, and even group those spells under the divine, primal, and arcane groupings, and kind of expand it for their own gameplay. But newer players can just rely on what they're doing now. So I do think they're making it more complex and simplifying it at the same time. Or I guess they're simplifying it but allowing for more complexity, uh, and not specialization but personalization. Personalization. Good heavens.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, and so with that, I mean, essentially the bulk of this Unearthed Arcana was pretty much like class breakdowns, right? Like they had the bard, like how you'd create it, the different, they've got it's basically most everything you'd need to create a bard. And just a reminder for anybody, like this is a playtest. They're still changing things. And so when they have these lists of, spells, feats, things like that, what they're really hoping is that if we find it's unbalanced or just kind of sucks and it's boring, then we got to say something. And they have a survey right there on D&D Beyond for you to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that's really cool. And I actually haven't tried playing any of the Unearthed Arcana at any of my tables yet. That's something I want to do in the future, but I kind of want to wait till a little bit more is released to like do that. But one thing that surprised me, well, I guess let's just go through the Bardic class and talk about some of the changes that I noticed. Obviously, we didn't notice everything, but this is what we did notice. So first, Bardic Inspiration has changed a lot, in my opinion. So now you can actually use it as a reaction to heal one of your party members. And the reason why I'm thinking this is big is because bards can kind of be the thing standing between a character and death. If they go to 0 hit points, and then the bard is like, I would like to use my reaction to heal them from across the room or whatever. I don't know. I don't think that's exactly how you can do it, but essentially that's what I'm envisioning it as.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that in regards to Bard, sorry, uh, uh, something that some people have been pointing out online is how Bardic Inspiration has changed. And personally, I think it's for the better in some ways. Um, it's no longer used as a bonus action. Instead, it's a reaction. So basically, if a creature is going to fail an attack roll, ability check, or a saving throw, or whatever, or what they call a D20 test nowadays, basically you can just use it as a reaction and be like, hey, extra, roll it 5 on that roll, right? Which I think is kind of nice. It just makes it feel a little bit more impactful. And I can totally see where they're trying to use this because they're trying to make it so you don't waste a Bardic Inspiration on someone who may forget about it, may not use it, because they're just hitting their rolls anyway. They don't really need that extra, 4 or 5 that you gave them.
Yeah.
This way, it's like, oh, kind of a last-ditch effort to save them. And I think it gives you a lot more power in influencing the combat.
Yeah. One other thing I noticed, and kind of in conjunction to the Bardic Inspiration, is that bards now have healing spells that are always prepared, essentially. And this is kind of crazy to me because before, clerics were primarily the healers, but now a lot more classes are being healing capable, I guess, and it with the pushes towards the inspiration and the pushes towards the healing, it feels like Wizards of the Coast is kind of wanting bards to be more supportive and more versatile.
Yeah.
You can have a bard that does lots of damage, but also a bard that heals, which I find interesting.
One, if I had one issue with how they group it, I feel like they're like the groupings don't necessarily make as much sense. And you see that especially with bards, because it's like if you call a bard an expert, so to say, when a bard has usually been kind of an all-rounder, I would say, like they've got spells, but they're mostly support. But then you can also do some weird things with them and make them more like kind of crafty and stuff like that. I don't know. It feels a little bit weird lumping them in with with a rogue, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
To be honest, the reason why they did that, or at least the reason why they're in the expert group, is because the bard, the rogue, and the ranger all have the expertise feature, which basically gives them the ability to add their proficiency to specific skills, or I think it's double their proficiency to skills they're proficient in.
Yeah.
Like a couple of them. And I like you, I do find that really interesting because I feel like the bard would definitely be more. I mean, they're not a warrior, a priest, or a mage, so I guess like maybe they put it in expert because they're like, what else do we put it in?
Yeah, exactly. And a big like I've seen a lot of comments on some of the things that they've done when they're introducing these classes and everything. Apparently, like they've really done a lot in terms of conditions. Like they just let's take the rogue for example. Uh, Apparently, when it comes to like hiding, typically you'd like do a stealth roll, all that kind of stuff. Now hidden is like an actual condition that you kind of have to like do something to get applied to your character. Almost like sick or something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's just kind of it's funny these little changes that you're seeing.
Yeah. To be honest, if I can talk about that, that makes me so happy because, like, if there's conditions, then there's also like requisites for those conditions.
Yeah.
Like you can't be grappled unless something is grappling you, something has its arms around you, you can't move and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why I'm happy about the hidden part is because my wife plays a rogue, and she often, as most rogues do, they're like, oh, I use my cunning action to hide on my bonus action. And you're like, you're in the middle of a room that's empty. Like, how are you going to hide? And they're like, well, I want to. And you're like, okay, roll for it. And they roll like a 25. And you're like, well, I don't know how, but you hid in an empty room full of people.
You just
like,
laid down on the ground and nobody.
Yeah.
I guess.
You became part of the floorboard. And anyway, so I'm kind of hoping that, that I'll be able to clear up some of that nonsensical hiding. Like, good heavens.
Yeah, I feel like people who, and honestly, there's a lot of people that that make rogues very annoying for a DM, right? Because they're just very effective in the right hands. I think there's going to be some people who are going to be mad about that because it feels a little bit like nerfing.
Yeah.
But hey, don't knock it till you've play tested it. But
Yeah.
yeah, other than that, I mean, they've just made so many like little changes here and there. Like I don't even. It's like hard to wrap my head around. Like there's like jumping is an action, and I'm like, how's jumping an action?
Yep.
Yeah, it's very funny to me that they like made it a specific action because I feel like most people just kind of like, oh, it's in my movement.
Yeah.
I jump as part of my movement.
Part of me wonders if maybe like a lot of people have written into them or like messaged them saying like, hey, like what do you do for this? and they tried and codified that. They tried to codify that a lot more, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of other games are getting more, not a lot of games, but like some other games, specifically I'm thinking of Pathfinder Second
Hmm.
Edition.
Hmm.
They added a jumping like action essentially.
Yeah.
But they have the benefit of like, oh, like you have essentially three actions, so like in a turn, and that could be like you actions or movement and stuff. This
Hmm.
one, I'm just kind of curious how people will feel if like jumping is like kind of a waste of movement. Like I wonder, because it
Yeah.
is like it is more of a risk reward kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Well, I mean, hopefully that helps DMs kind of set up dynamic combat situations where you're fighting, but the odds are stacked against you. So, kind of the idea is to fight long enough to escape. And there's a rickety bridge and it breaks and you have to jump. Like situations like that can be made more and more often because sometimes combat gets tedious, and allowing your characters to jumping onto a building from ground floor and kind of getting a better vantage point hopefully opens up more creativity.
Yeah, yeah, I think it will, and I think that's the key here. And I'm really hoping that a lot of these changes still, you know, because they're clarifying things. They're seeing
Yeah.
where they had holes before,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hoping that they are able to solidify certain things while not removing the chance for players to get creative.
Yeah.
And even if they do, I mean, there's always the rule of fun, right? You can
Yeah.
always change something in your own personal game, right?
Yeah. Part
So
of me wonders,
go ahead.
just real quick, part of me wonders like these two unearthed arcana like sections have been pretty long, and I'm kind of wondering like how long is the player's handbook going to be? Because like if they keep doing this, like it's not supposed to be released till 2024, and I don't know, like that's a long time with lots of unearthed arcana.
hmm Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be a lot. But I think it'll be good in the end because this is the next big edition, right? They're doing a lot more playtesting than they did with 5e, uh, and I've always believed that as much as feedback is painful for creators, and I'm sure certain that they're probably like, why does everybody have a problem with this? We thought hard on it, but
Hmm.
in the end, it's going to be better for everybody
Yeah.
with these comments. But so in regards to the Ranger, real quick, you were pretty excited about something, or you were you
Yeah.
excited, or did you have an issue with it? I forget.
To be honest, I'm excited. I do like the Ranger class. It is one that I, I've seen played a couple times at my own tables, and it's always like kind of tedious for the people. Like it's not as powerful as they want, or it's just it's just kind of weak. Uh,
Yeah.
but in this playtest material, they made it so you don't have to concentrate on Hunter's Mark, which is pretty powerful because basically once you have
Yeah.
Hunter's Mark on something, you can pretty much always find it until you kill it or the duration ends. And you get that at first level, so like that's I guess there's lots of memes about Eldritch Blast being like the only thing warlocks do. I can foresee in the future Hunter's Mark kind of replacing that for Rangers. So people doing memes about warlocks do Eldritch Blast, Rangers do Hunter's Mark, and that's it. Um, but I think it's a cool idea. One other thing that Rangers also can do now is cast Cure Wounds, which is very interesting because again, Cure Wounds was a spell that was kind of limited to the select few, but now Rangers can do it, which better or worse, it's cool.
Yeah, it should be very interesting. Frankly, Rangers kind of needed an overhaul in
Yeah,
some ways. So I think it was smart that they've made some big changes there,
yeah,
Um, But one thing that I thought was interesting, and I think we talked about this earlier, but rangers and bards, they now do prepared spell lists, very similar to wizards, where it's like, hey, you're not like just getting to do, you don't just have a few specific spells. You have access to like all the spells, like for your level, right? But you have to prepare them for the day. And if you
Yeah,
prepare the wrong ones, then you know, sucks to be you.
yeah,
But it gives you more options to prepare if you do know what to prepare for. So that's kind of cool.
yeah. And it makes sense because, like, bards, you'd think that a bard would be traveling with books or something to,
Yeah.
reference. Rangers, I'll be honest, I'm kind of curious as to why they did that for Rangers because, like, narratively speaking, a Ranger, they're traveling, they should be traveling light. I wouldn't imagine them to have, like, a big old spell book or something like that. But maybe they're, they are primal spells, so maybe they get it from the land or something like that through communion or I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's that. I also think that, and with us talking about how Ranger kind of felt like a more boring class, like
Hmm.
I think that them with prepared spells, it just gives someone a lot more flexibility to play their own style, you know?
Yeah,
Since they get access to so many more spells at their level, right?
yeah,
And so I'm like, honestly, I think that's good, especially with expert classes, because it makes sense. The whole idea of an expert classes is an abundance of skills, right?
yeah,
And so it makes sense that the two spellcasters have an abundance of options, even if they have to like be more expert about how which ones they choose, right?
yeah. That does make a lot of sense. But yeah, like you said, I'm really glad they overhauled the Ranger class because too many times people are like, "Oh, I want to be like Aragorn," and then they're more like a sad stand-in for Aragorn that can't really do much, and you're
I
just like,
know.
"Oh, I feel so bad for you, you poor player." You know?
Yeah.
But
Um,
uh,
Go ahead.
unless you had anything else about the Ranger, I was going to talk a little bit about the Rogue.
I mean, just final things on the Ranger. Favorite terrain is gone, which frankly was kind of useless in my opinion.
Yeah,
So, uh, Ding Dong the Witch is dead. Not actually. It wasn't quite witch level,
yeah,
but it was just useless. And so in my mind, I think that was just a good, cutting off the superfluous fat. So,
hmm,
um, but yeah, that was the last thing. Go ahead.
I love it. Um, Kind of the thing that stuck out to me is the subclass they revealed for the rogue, or included, I guess, is just the thief one. It to me it sounds a whole lot more like Indiana Jones because like you can do a lot more about like moving things and you can use items that usually you wouldn't be able to, and it seems very much like treasure hunter, treasure finder, and very versatile in that way. But that's just my opinion. I've been watching a lot of Expedition Unknown, so that's probably where my mind is, anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, which I'd always hope that's the case, because they've only really talked about like a subclass per thing
Hmm.
this time, right?
Yeah,
Um, but the subclasses is where each gaming experience really changes, and so I'm glad that that Thief has kind of seen a lot of that reworking. I think it's,
yeah,
frankly, I think they're going to need to rework the rogue a little bit,
yeah,
from this play test, because they're making some changes. That's for sure.
yeah, yeah. Uh, One thing, and this just kind of reminded me of it. Just all the classes in general that I think is a big change. So previously, there was a level 20 uh, upgrade, I guess, that you get when you get to level 20. With this, they've actually said that all level 20s from 5e are now something you get at level 18. And then at level 20, you get what's called an epic boon, which is basically like a feat, but like super powered. So there's a whole list of them at the very bottom. Um, One is like, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like epic boon of like hitting or something like that. And basically, in between, or like every short rest, you can choose to just hit every time, like if you miss. Like once a short rest, or once in between short rests or long rests, which to me is like crazy, but like I think that's really cool.
Wait a second. So once every short rest, you can just choose to hit someone.
Yeah, so like let's say you've just had your short rest, you go into combat, you swing, and you miss, and you use your epic boon, and instead of missing, you just hit. And then you can't
Mm,
use that until the next short rest or long rest or something like that. But I mean, by that point, you're like fighting Galactus, like
yeah,
planets following things. So it it's useful.
I know. I'm just looking through. Uh, I just get reminded every once in a while. I've played so few like crazy high level campaigns,
Right.
especially without like 20th level like
Mm-hmm.
spells. But like some of these 20th level spells are like just
Kind of
incredible.
nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, like I do love all of the ones that just say true resurrection. I'm like,
Yes.
so there's a false resurrection? I know
Lol.
there is. Like there is
Yeah.
one that's like it only lasts for like 24 hours or something, but like
Yeah.
I think it's funny that added word true there.
Yeah.
Um
Seriously.
yeah, seriously. Uh it's also funny that they have a power word heal.
I love that.
I've got to look that one up because I've never looked it up, but I was just looking at the list and I was like, because I know a lot of other power words that seem a lot more like helpful, but I'm like, I'm guessing power word heal is just straight up make them healthy completely. But it's
Right.
funny as a level 9 spell. I'm like, I mean that's cool, but like, feel like I'd
Yeah.
rather
Here.
do tsunami or storm of vengeance or something, you know?
Right. So this is what Power Word Heal says. A wave of healing energy washes over a creature you touch. The target regains all its hit points. If the creature is charmed, frightened, paralyzed, or stunned, the condition ends. If the creature is prone, it can use its reaction to stand up. The spell has no effect on undead or constructs, so bad news for undead and Warforged.
God dang, so close to being a good thing.
Lol.
Um,
Yeah, that's got to be like a level 8 thing, because that doesn't seem like a level 9 thing.
oh, totally, yeah, yeah. But otherwise, what kind of are there any other kind of final things you want to talk about with some of the changes? Because a lot of it's nitty gritty. We're not
Yeah,
we're not going to be able to get into all of it because each class has like some small things. We've tried to talk about some of the bigger like things
for sure.
that have been done, but there's a lot of small things, guys, and it gets a little overwhelming, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the only thing I would say is, like, if you haven't taken the chance, go to D&D Beyond and get Unearthed Arcana for free. Just download it, read through it, and play test it yourself, because that's really the best way you're gonna know what's changed up, what hasn't, what you like and what you don't. There is a whole list of feats, and I saw most of them are very similar or exact copies of what was in 5e.
Hmm.
But again, I imagine that D&D Beyond comes out with a whole lot more feats and backgrounds for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think I am interested in seeing how they tweak these further, because one thing that I just thought of was how the playtest played kind of two roles. I think that and the second one we're not aware of as much. But the first role is like, hey, they spent all this time thinking up these ideas, and they want our feedback. But I think the bigger one is the second one because you're gonna have a lot of people providing feedback and also giving suggestions. And there's like so many smart, like very creative people playing D and
Mm-hmm.
D, and they're going to give wonderful suggestions for each of these classes about like we probably will even see some new feats, frankly. I wouldn't be
Yeah,
surprised. That are just like cool, period. Um, and we're certainly going to see some more balancing that I would say is probably led by the players
agreed.
and their feedback.
I
But
really
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
To add to that, like we all watch like Dimension 20, Critical Role, all the famous dungeon masters and such. You listener, I want you to think about this. The best dungeon master in the world is probably unknown to everyone in the world, but like their table, because
true.
just chances are they are, there's someone out there better than Matt Mercer, you know, uh, Brendan. Gosh, what's his last name? From Dimension
Uh,
20.
yeah, it's
Shoot,
Brendan.
Brendan. Anyways, him. You know him.
Yeah, yes, I know Brendan.
Gosh, mind blank. But there's chances are there's bound to be someone out there better than them that we'll never know of because they just don't want to be out in public. But they're just and hopefully that should encourage you because maybe that person could be you. Maybe that person is you. You know, like
Hmm.
it has to be someone. So why not you? So if and I know there's lots of listeners out there who have not actually dungeon mastered. This is your call to repentance. If you're listening to this podcast, you should be at least preparing for your first session, and you have no excuses because you have some unearthed arcana for free that you can just go download and get and play.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So get out there, everybody, and definitely download it, take a look. A simple way, if you're confused about how to get involved with this playtest, what I would say is this one is a lot more approachable than the other one
Mm-hmm.
to actually like playtest and not just read, because this one you can actually like take these three classes and like one of your players, if any of your players are really into this, I would frankly encourage them to be like, hey, feel free to use the new rogues kind of template, essentially, and we can see how it works, right?
Yeah, agreed. Um, that's all I have to say about that. Anything else, Tanner?
No, I think that's good. Let's we got some announcements, right?
Yes, sir. Uh, Listener, before we close today's episode, like I said at the beginning, we have an awesome announcement. So, as I said, today, well, as of the release of this podcast episode, so Thursday the 27th, we are doing a giveaway. Those of you who on YouTube are probably a couple days ahead. You got kind of a head start, but we're lucky enough to have been able to join with Dungeon Alchemist for this giveaway to give away a free download key to their map making software on Steam. I personally use this software for all of my online one shots and actually started using it to help make the maps or at least kind of the floor layout plan for my dungeons in my personal campaign. And let me tell you, it makes making dungeons a lot easier because, as I say, start with the map and then you can just fill in room by room what's in the dungeon. And like I said, we have one download key, which means one winner. And the giveaway is going to go from the 27th until the next podcast episode, so from Thursday to Thursday, where we're going to announce the winner. And here are the rules for the giveaway. There are multiple ways to enter, and you can do all of them and a couple of them more than once. Well, actually, just one of them more than once. So the first way to enter to the giveaway is follow How to Be a Better DM podcast on Instagram for one entry. And yes, if you already follow, that counts. So that's one entry. Follow How to Be a Better DM podcast on Instagram. Number two, for two entries into the giveaway, subscribe to the podcast, our podcast, and then DM us a screenshot showing that you have subscribed. Again, that's for two entries. Number three is 5 entries. For 5 big entries into the giveaway, you have to subscribe to Dungeon Alchemist on YouTube and then DM us a screenshot showing that you've subscribed to that channel. And then number 4 is every friend you tag on any of our giveaway related Instagram posts, that equals 1 entry tag. So if you tag 15 friends, that's 15 entries. And we're going to have all of these rules in the bio of our Instagram. So if you forget these, check that out or listen to this episode again. But yeah, those are the rules for our giveaway. And again, I really love Dungeon Alchemist, and they're just really cool. Like a month ago, they came out with new features where you could actually import like your mini that you made from Hero Forge into the software and kind of use it as a token when you play online, which I think is a super cool add-on. But anyways,
Yeah.
go
Yeah,
ahead, Tim.
I just think that it's great because I don't know if you guys feel similarly, but sometimes I feel so constrained by the maps I can find, especially where I do a lot of gaming on Roll20. Uh, I kind of need something online that I can actually put in. And there's a lot of wonderful options out there. But what I like about Dungeon Alchemist is that you can create something. So you can create a great encounter and then have a map to match that, instead of having to find a map and like kind of change your encounter based on that, right? It just gives you more freedom that way.
Agreed. And I'd highly encourage all of you to check out Dungeon Alchemist during this week and after, because they're just really awesome. So if you do, go to betterdungeonmaster.com/dungeon-alchemist, and that'll take you right to their website so you can see what they're all about. But we're super happy to be able to do this giveaway, and it never really would have happened without your support. So we just wanted to say thank you for joining the podcast, our one shots, and everything else that we do. You guys really are the magic of how to be a better DM. I actually wanted to give a couple of shout outs to Rodrigo, Steve, and Brandon. Two of those were on our one shot last week, but you guys filled out our feedback survey, and that feedback has been super helpful. And we'd encourage all the rest of you to go to betterdungeonmaster.com/feedback and fill out the survey. But we'll be back next week with another awesome show and the winner of the giveaway. But until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.